too soon, where the air is frozen solid in the month of June, and they kill their former leaders with astounding glee. If you don't believe me, brother, ask Leon Trotsky. Russia, oh baby, in Russia. Russia, oh baby, in Russia. Russia, oh baby, in Russia. Russia, oh baby, in Russia.
How to Kill Comrades and Influence People by Kurt Ringquist. Today, I was thinking I would maybe go to the beach or possibly build a rocket engine out of odds and ends I have lying around the house. Instead, I decided to write about the various leaders of the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union, or Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, was born on December 28, 1922, by gingerly combining the Russian Soviet Federative Socialist Republic, I think they just made up federative, the Transcaucasian Soviet Federative Socialist Republic, the Ukrainian Soviet Socialist Republic, and the Belarusian Soviet Socialist Republic, shaking well, pouring into an ungreased 9x12 pan, and placing in a 350-degree oven for 45 minutes. They stuck a fork in the Ukraine, and when it came out clean, they knew it was done. Vladimir Lenin was the first generally recognized ruler of the USSR. I say generally recognized because they didn't do things like we do here. Not that there's anything necessarily wrong with that. They don't have something simple like a president or a prime minister who is obviously in charge. The whole Dick Cheney, George Bush thing was an exception. The Soviet Union had a lot of committees and councils and things, and the leader was pretty much the guy who could give everyone else orders without getting shot. Lenin ruled as the chairman of the Council of People's Commissars, or Sovnarkom, which I believe is now the name of an over-the-counter sleep aid, until he started getting in the habit of having strokes and not showing up for the Commissars' Council picnics. At this point, 3 guys tried to share power. Yeah, because that always works real well. They were Lev Kamenev, Grigory Zinoviev, and a little guy named Joseph Stalin. In the meantime, the new chairman of the Sovnarkom, Alexei Rykov, thought he was in charge, but nobody seemed to listen to him, not even his grown children, who were always asking for the keys to the Ford and never filling it with gas when they were done. Rykov mainly whined about nobody paying any attention to him all the way until 1938, when he was arrested and executed for treason. He would have been better off keeping his big mouth shut. The ruling troika of Kamenev, Zinoviev, and Stalin, they'd never play Woodstock with that name, muddled along until 1925, when Lev and Grigory decided they had had enough of Joe Stalin and struck out on their own. In retrospect, this was not the best decision they could have made. Stalin was an expert at working the system of committees and councils and neighborhood watch associations that bestowed power. He had figured out the key to being in charge in the USSR. Make lots of friends in various committees until you're able to get all your friends to agree to give you absolute power, then promptly arrest and execute all your friends. It took a while, but Stalin was a patient man, and by 1936, teachers all over the Soviet Union were busy scratching out the names of Kamenev and Zinoviev from all the textbooks because it seemed they had never actually existed. Stalin grew to enjoy killing people, so he did a lot of it throughout the 1930s. Just as it seemed he might run out of Russians to kill, Hitler obligingly invaded the USSR so that Stalin could take a break and kill Germans for a change. For this, the Russian people hailed Stalin as their great hero. It doesn't take much. Stalin consolidated so well that he found it hard to put all his official titles onto one business card. He was General Secretary of the Communist Party, Premier of the Soviet Union, Minister of Defense, Chairman of the State Defense Committee, People's Commissariat of Nationalities, a Marshal in the Soviet Army, and won the award for Best Mustache East of the Caucasus 23 years running. On March 5, 1953, Stalin gave it all up. He had to, being dead and all. This left a great power vacuum in the Soviet Union, and once again they thought sharing power among another troika was the way to go. Georgy Malenkov, who resembled a fat Wendell Willkie, thought he should get the head job by himself, but agreed to share with Lavrenti Beria, the head of Stalin's secret police. You can understand that. And Vyacheslav Molotov, the inventor of the cocktail which has lit up many an otherwise dull block party. This little group was a cohesive and united whole for about 100 days before Molotov and Malenkov decided they could safely get rid of Beria. They had him arrested for treason and executed. Can you imagine if we did things this way? I'm sorry, Jimmy Carter. You've lost the election. Time to go out and get shot. Malenkov seized power, but only had time to get Premier of the Soviet Union printed on his business cards before Nikita Khrushchev moved in on him and got better titles. Khrushchev was the first secretary of the Central Committee of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union, at which point he apparently ran out of subordinate clauses, and chairman of the Council of Ministers. Fortunately for Malenkov, around this time the leaders of the USSR stopped executing their former rivals. Perhaps they got bored or bullets were getting expensive. Malenkov managed to live to the ripe old age of 86, but could never get his grandchildren to believe he used to run things. Khrushchev is the first Soviet leader I remember, banging his shoe on tables and looking at kitchens with Vice President Nixon before chickening out during the Cuban Missile Crisis, which I believe ultimately led to his downfall 2 years later, because losing face is not something the Russian personality takes kindly to. In 1964, while enjoying a leisurely swim in Abkhazia, Nikita got a call from an upstart named Leonid Brezhnev and was told to hurry back to Moscow for an important vote in the Politburo. Khrushchev must have known something was up because he sure as hell hadn't scheduled any important vote, but he went back anyway and was told he had just retired. It was news to him, but apparently bullets were still expensive, so he just went back on vacation for 7 more years until he died all on his own. For a while, it wasn't clear whether it was Brezhnev who was running things or Alexei Kosygin. Kosygin was the guy they sent all over the world to various meetings and things, so naturally the West thought he was in charge. Silly West. We should have known that when a power struggle is going on in the Soviet Union, the real honcho stays in Moscow, consolidating his position while the stooge gets sent to international conferences where nothing gets decided anyway. Brezhnev was the man. Leonid decided to stay with one big title, but he kept changing it. First, he was first secretary of the Central Committee of the Communist Party. Then he shortened it to general secretary, and finally settled on chairman of the Presidium. Because the country had to spend billions of rubles changing all the stationery and repainting all the welcome signs at the airports every time Leonid decided to change his title, economic stagnation set in. Trying to conquer a little place called Afghanistan didn't help. By the time Brezhnev died in 1982, nobody wanted the job as whatchamacallit of the Soviet Union, so it went by default to whatever old guy lost when the Politburo played musical chairs. First, it was ex-KGB head Yuri Andropov, who lasted 1 year and 3 months before kicking the bucket. Then they found an even older and slower guy who was deaf and couldn't even hear the music, so he never had a chance, Konstantin Chernenko. He made it just over a year, and the airport sign painters all quit in disgust because the paint wasn't even dry from the last change in leadership, plus those names are all hard to spell. At long last, in came a breath of fresh air, Mikhail Gorbachev. He was young, in his 50s, full of ideas on how to shake up the old guard and bring Russia kicking and screaming into the late 20th century. Frankly, nothing much of interest had happened since Sputnik. He made the world learn 2 Russian words, perestroika, meaning, possibly, opinion varies, restructuring, and glasnost, meaning openness. This effectively doubled the West's Russian vocabulary, which had previously consisted of the words niet and borscht. Gorbachev worked very hard to modernize the USSR and succeeded to the extent that he presided over its dissolution on December 25, 1991. The USSR lived for just a few days short of 69 years, which is very close to the average lifespan of its individual rulers. It cost a lot less money to become head of the Soviet Union than it does to become president of the United States. Most of your budget was spent on vodka and bullets. But the stakes are higher. If you lose, someone else's bullet budget might be spent on you. Today, Russia has an official president who takes his shirt off at every opportunity. You never saw Stalin with his shirt off. Regular elections and the appearance of stability and strength. Of course, they still can't make a car worth a damn, although neither can Chrysler, but they're trying to be more like us, and at least they still have a space program. Hey, I wonder if they could help me with my rocket engine.
If I find myself in Russia, it'll be too late. I don't want to see my head served on a dinner plate. On a